But there was a way of Greek reasoning that could be brought in that began to be a school of interpretation called allegorical interpretation. That means where you don't just take the scriptures for what it says, but everything means something much deeper that you have to dig for. But the problem with that is that it can become very, very subjective to the point where you have 100 different interpretations of the same scripture, sometimes with extremely different ideas, because each one of them thinks they've come to the deep hidden allegorical meaning rather than just taking for what it plainly says. So this theology was especially strong in Alexandria, but also a certain amount of anti-Semitism in some of the Gentile church leaders of the church in Alexandria. So they began to come up with a way to try to defend themselves that they weren't really Jewish, which they were seen really more as a sect of Judaism at the time than as a separate religion. So in trying to do that, they more and more began to neglect very clear statements of Scripture, like Paul, who was saying in places like Romans 9 through 11 that God has not rejected Israel. We as Gentile believers should not be arrogant toward the roots of our faith. And they just went in the face of that, really, and began to take other scriptures which talk about the fact that the Old Testament scriptures find their completion, their fulfillment, their goal in what has come forth in the New Testament with Jesus, and basically said, well, the Jews just blew it, so God has rejected them. But the problem with that is the sovereignty and faithfulness of God. If God can't get it right the first time and has to kind of, in a sense, go to plan B, what's to say there's not a plan C, which actually then the Muslims did lodge upon. And they said, well, the Jews failed, and then the Christians failed, and now we have replaced them. And actually the replacement theology very much laid the foundation for Islam to say that it had replaced Christianity. And they have a real point. If God isn't big enough and great enough and wise enough and sovereign enough and faithful enough to bring the plan A that he starts with to completion, why shouldn't there be plan D, E, and so on? Eventually, each one can replace the other. Or if we look at Romans 9 through 11, it makes it very clear that God from the beginning knew that a large percentage of the Jewish people would reject their Jewish Messiah, Jesus, but that he, through that, would be able to bring it to the nations and make what he had done with them a blessing to the nations, and then use those nations, he said, to provoke them back to jealousy, and in the end bring it all around with this glorious plan A, finishing up with the Jews and the Gentiles grafted in together, according to Ephesians 2, one new man, Jew and Gentile.